I'm back in from the range after recording our PAC-T test for this 230 grain Federal HST in 45 auto. And you know, I took a look at some of the results and I'm real excited. This may be the best bullet we've ever tested. Hey, stick around, we're going to roll that footage, but then we're going to do a full review and recap right here. This is my HK45 Tactical. Today, it's going to be used for my PAC-T test. And what I'm testing is the Federal 230 grain HST bullet. That's a good bullet. It has really performed well. One of the best bullets I've ever tested in the 9mm Luger. Will its reputation hold up at 45 ACP? Well, let's find out. I'm going to be shooting a 5-shot group from 15 yards at this bullseye target right over here. Well, a fresh bullseye target right over here. And I'm going to be measuring precision, that's the extreme spread of that 5-shot group, accuracy, that's the bullseye target score, and consistency is going to come from the standard deviation of muzzle velocities from my LabRadar chronograph. The T part of PAC-T is a terminal ballistics test, and for that I'm going to be using this 20% ballistic gelatin, considered a NATO block, 1 round fired from a distance of 7 yards. We'll see how it performs. Going to do a full analysis of this thing back at the house when we get done here at the shooting range. It's pretty consistent, hanging in there at about the 900 feet per second. And we're clear. Back on safe. Take a look at how it did. Recorded all 5 rounds. Standard deviation a little bit higher than I thought it was going to be. 20.4 feet per second. I can see some of the holes there in the red. You've got a better view than me. Doesn't look like it did too bad. But now the proof is in the pudding as a terminal bullet or as a self-defense bullet. We're going to put 1 round into that clear ballistic gelatin. Now I've got a couple of other bullets in this gel block already. You can catch up on those PAC-T tests using the link that's in the description. But our 230 grain Federal HST is right there. This is a 16-inch gel block. We've got some really nice penetration on this. We'll get the official measurement back in the shop. But it looks like, once again, that this bullet, the HST, has done a very nice job. You know, I complained in my previous video that I wasn't too happy with some of the results. In fact, I was disappointed in many of the results for our PAC-T tests that we've been doing this year. But I think this one really makes up for it. We've had good luck with Federal HST bullets in the past. We've shot the 124 grain and 147 grain 9mm Luger, and now we have shot the 230 grain Federal HST in 45 ACP. Let's dig right into these results because it's real exciting and very good stuff. Let's start by looking at the target, the bullseye target, and you know, this bullet shot pretty darn well. This was from my 45 Tactical H&K pistol. We had a muzzle velocity, mean or average muzzle velocity, of 929 feet per second with a standard deviation of 20.4. Now, we're well into the double digits there, 20.4, nothing really to write home about, but not terrible. It is factory ammo, so oftentimes we do see fairly higher standard deviations, less consistency in those sort of rounds, that sort of ammo. So it didn't do bad. But on paper, it actually scored pretty well, and it grouped pretty well. The extreme spread that we're looking at was 1.284, and yes, we have done better with other bullets, and a score of 46 points, everything in the 9 and 10 ring, but unfortunately nothing in the X ring. If I had adjusted my sights, these are adjustable sights on that HK45 Tactical, if I had adjusted those sights, which would have just been reducing or lowering that group just a little bit, of course it would have shot a perfect 50 points, and it would have had 2 in the X ring. Now let's take a look at the recoil results. And what I'm doing with the recoil measurements is number one, I'm using the Mantis X10 and its recoil meter mode. And my standard ammo is 9mm Luger CCI Blazer Brass in 115 grain. So I'm comparing everything to that standard. I use that because I think a lot of you are probably familiar with that ammo. It's prolific. We see it kind of all over the place, and very likely you have shot that ammo already. So if we compare this 45 with that standard 9mm, not surprisingly, we have longer recovery time, 1.5, almost 1.6 seconds of recovery time, and a muzzle rise of 31.4 degrees. Quite a bit more recoil than the 9mm Luger in that 115 grain ball ammo. Not surprising there, certainly not surprising at all. And I realize that this very reason is why a lot of folks shy away from the 45, because it does have quite a bit more recoil. And one thing I'll note is while the 45 ACP in this big 230 grain bullet certainly packs a wallop, it has a lot of energy being transmitted into that target, into the gel block or whatever. The 9mm, I always say that it sort of strikes like lightning, much faster, still produces some very good wounding in those gel blocks or in the target, but they're very different type of rounds. And the 9mm with that much lower, much more manageable recoil and higher magazine capacity gives you more what we call firepower. Someone might argue, well, you need more firepower just to come close to what the 45 ACP gives you. Now, I'm not going to get into that discussion. We've probably had that discussion already, but I do point that out, that there are real serious differences between those two very good rounds, 9mm and 45 ACP. But let's get right back to the results of this Federal HST. And now let's look at the terminal ballistic results. You know, take a look to begin with at this maximum transient cavitation channel, maximum wound channel that I was able to capture with the slow motion video, looking at it frame by frame by frame. That's pretty good. There is some serious energy being transmitted in the first 3 to 4 inches inside that gel block, and we see a fairly large wound channel halfway through this gel block, which again is a 16-inch long by 6-inch by 6-inch gel block. So that bullet, while it did hit a little bit high or higher in the gel block, we can see that that wound channel is probably a good 3 inches, about half of that total size of the block if you take a look at that, or if you took a look at that pretty closely. The more objective or measurable results, let's take a look at that. Penetration almost 12 inches, where the bullet ended up 11 3/4 inches. Retained weight 100%. Started off 230 grains, I'm assuming, ended up 230 grains. The retained length is 0.476 of an inch, almost a ½ inch long projectile, even after it mushroomed so nicely or expanded so nicely. And there's our expansion score, 175%. Now, what I'm all excited about is the total score, the final score for this bullet, and that is 475 points out of a possible 500. We haven't had anything that has come close to this. This is now the reigning champion, the best bullet that I've ever tested in this rather extensive PAC-T testing. Really did a great job. You know, HSTs have done really well for me in the past. They're a very good self-defense, personal defense bullet. But, you know, this one really is like the top of the line. Really happy on how this thing turned out. And you know, it didn't score 500, and I'm starting to wonder if 500, a perfect score, is even possible. Because the scoring really is dependent upon penetration, expansion, and weight retention. So a bullet like this that really expanded quite nicely, almost double its size, or the bullets, I should say, that do expand very well and get a high expansion score, well, they may not penetrate quite so deeply, and so then their penetration score drops down a little bit more. You know, earlier in this season, I said that it looks like some manufacturers might be building bullets to pass the test, to score very, very well in that test. And then when you modify the test a little bit, it doesn't score so well anymore. So I'm not so concerned about actually achieving a 500 on one of these tests. It would be neat to see a bullet that got a perfect 500 score, but realistically, I don't know if that's possible. Realize also that this was a 20% NATO gel block, almost brand new, and that bullet had to pass through a layer of essentially my old Carhartt jacket, a layer of leather, and then into that gel block. So it really did a good job. It did not clog at all. And boy, I guess I can't say too much good about this. Very happy on how this all turned out. Federal HST 230 grain. There we go. Thanks a bunch for watching. If you got some comments on or questions on what we did today, or other bullets you might like us to test, or maybe some comments on this particular bullet, please post those in the comments below. And you know, if you don't mind, I've noticed that I'm seeing very, very few comments coming through, and I suspect some of those comments are being blocked or deleted, and I just never see them. So if you don't mind, just try some comments, even just a quick checking in type of comment. Well, thanks a bunch for watching.